Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. In a stunning and emotionally explosive turn of events that sends shockwaves through Genoa City, The Young and the Restless delivers one of its most psychologically intense and morally challenging storylines in recent memory as Nikki Newman, long regarded as the emotional compass and enduring anchor of the Newman Empire, finally reaches her breaking point and threatens Victor Newman with the one consequence he has always believed himself immune to: divorce, not as a bluff, not as a fleeting reaction, but as a deeply considered ultimatum born from years of emotional bruises, calculated cruelty, and the slow erosion of love under the weight of Victor's relentless obsession with control, power, and domination. And this moment does not arrive suddenly but instead emerges from a long simmering buildup in which Nikki's silence has spoken louder than any confrontation ever could, her loyalty masking a growing sense of betrayal as Victor once again crosses moral lines with ruthless efficiency, hurting not only his enemies but his own family, manipulating situations to assert dominance without regard for the collateral damage inflicted on those who love him most. And as the storyline unfolds, viewers witness Nikki grappling internally with the painful realization that the man she has defended, forgiven, and stood beside for decades may no longer be capable, or willing, to change, and this internal struggle is rendered with devastating nuance as Nikki reflects on the countless times she rationalized Victor's behavior, telling herself that his cruelty was merely toughness, that his manipulation was strategy, that his emotional distance was a necessary armor forged by a lifetime of battles. Yet each rationalization now rings hollow as the evidence mounts that Victor's actions are no longer about protection or survival but about control for its own sake. And the turning point comes when Victor, in a move that even Nikki cannot excuse, orchestrates a ruthless maneuver that publicly humiliates someone close to her. Whether it be a calculated betrayal involving Victoria, an underhanded attack on Jack that drags Nikki into an ethical quagmire, or a cold dismissal of Nikki's pleas for compassion, forcing Nikki to confront the truth she has long avoided. Victor does not see limits when it comes to winning, not even when the cost is her dignity, her values, or her emotional well-being. And in a quietly devastating scene charged with decades of shared history, Nikki finally stands her ground, her voice trembling not with fear but with clarity as she tells Victor that his cruelty has reached a point of no return, that she can no longer be complicit in the harm he inflicts, and that unless he takes responsibility for his actions and shows genuine remorse, not strategic regret, not performative apologies but real change, she will walk away from the marriage that once defined both of their lives. And the power of this moment lies not in raised voices or dramatic gestures but in the stillness between them, in Victor's stunned silence as he realizes that this threat is unlike any Nikki has ever made before, because it is not fueled by anger but by self-respect. And as the aftermath ripples outward, the question at the heart of the storyline becomes unavoidable. Will this finally change Victor Newman, a man who has built an empire by bending the world to his will, or will it harden him further, pushing him into the familiar pattern of doubling down rather than looking inward? And the show masterfully explores this dilemma by juxtaposing Victor's internal conflict with Nikki's quiet resolve, showing Victor alone in his office at Newman Enterprises, surrounded by symbols of his success that suddenly feel hollow as he replays Nikki's words in his mind, her threat cutting deeper than any rival's attack because it strikes at the one thing he has always claimed to cherish above all else: his family. Yet even in this introspection, Victor's instincts war with his conscience, as he struggles to distinguish between vulnerability and weakness, wondering whether changing for Nikki would mean surrendering the very traits that made him who he is. And this internal battle is mirrored by the reactions of those around them, as Victoria, ever pragmatic yet emotionally wounded by her father's methods, cautiously supports her mother's stance while questioning whether Victor is capable of true transformation, while Nick, hardened by years of being both manipulated and dismissed by Victor, openly doubts that this ultimatum will have any lasting effect, warning Nikki that Victor has a way of making grand gestures only to revert to old habits once the immediate threat passes. And even Adam, whose relationship with Victor is the most volatile of all, watches the situation with a mix of cynicism and longing, wondering if Nikki's stand might finally force Victor to confront the damage he has caused not only to his enemies but to his own children. And as the storyline deepens, the writers skillfully peel back layers of Nikki's character, reminding viewers that this is not merely a wife reacting to a single act of cruelty, but a woman who has spent years sacrificing her own emotional needs to preserve a partnership that increasingly demands silence in exchange for security. And in poignant moments with friends like Sharon or even an unexpected confidant such as Jack, Nikki admits that threatening divorce is not about punishment but about survival, about reclaiming her sense of self before it is completely subsumed by Victor's shadow. And these scenes resonate with raw authenticity as Nikki acknowledges her own complicity, confessing that she stayed not only out of love but out of fear of loneliness, fear of destabilizing her family, fear of confronting a life without the man who has been both her greatest love and her greatest torment. And yet, in confronting Victor, Nikki takes a step that redefines her role in Genoa City, transforming her from the long-suffering partner into a woman who demands accountability. And this shift forces Victor to face consequences he cannot simply buy, threaten, or outmaneuver, because Nikki's power over him has never been financial or strategic but emotional, rooted in a shared history that no rival can replicate. And as Victor attempts to respond, viewers see him oscillate between defensiveness and vulnerability, at times lashing out by justifying his actions as necessary evils in a ruthless world, at times softening as memories of their early years surface, memories of a time when love, not control, was the foundation of their bond. And these flashes of humanity raise the tantalizing possibility that Nikki's ultimatum might succeed where all others have failed, not because Victor fears losing his wife, but because he fears losing the version of himself that existed before power consumed him. And yet the show refuses to offer easy answers, instead allowing tension to build as Victor makes tentative efforts to change, perhaps calling off a vendetta, offering a rare apology, or showing restraint in a situation where he would normally strike, only for viewers to question whether these actions represent genuine growth or calculated moves designed to placate Nikki long enough to regain his footing. And Nikki, wiser now and painfully aware of Victor's patterns, watches closely, refusing to be swayed by words alone, insisting on sustained change rather than symbolic gestures. And this dynamic creates a gripping emotional chess match in which love and manipulation blur, forcing both characters to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and each other. And as the storyline unfolds over weeks, the threat of divorce looms large not only as a personal crisis but as a seismic shift in Genoa City's power structure, because a true separation between Nikki and Victor would reverberate through Newman enterprises, alter alliances, and embolden enemies who sense vulnerability at the top. And this external pressure tests Victor further, as he must decide whether preserving his empire is worth sacrificing the one person who has stood by him through every rise and fall. And in a particularly haunting scene, Victor is confronted with the realization that for the first time in his life, he cannot win by force because Nikki's decision lies beyond his control, and this realization unsettles him more deeply than any hostile takeover ever could. While Nikki, standing firm despite moments of doubt and heartbreak, demonstrates a quiet strength that redefines what power looks like in a world dominated by titans like Victor Newman. And the emotional climax of the storyline hinges on a single question that resonates far beyond the confines of soap opera drama. Can a person who has built his identity on cruelty and control truly change when confronted with the loss of love? Or is change impossible without the complete dismantling of the very self that achieves success? And The Young and the Restless handles this question with rare maturity, allowing the audience to empathize with both Nikki's pain and Victor's struggle without excusing his actions. And as the episodes progress toward a pivotal decision, whether Nikki will follow through on her threat or whether Victor will finally demonstrate lasting change, the show invites viewers to reflect on themes of accountability, self-worth, and the cost of unconditional loyalty, making this storyline not just a shocking twist but a deeply human exploration of marriage under strain. And regardless of the outcome, one thing is certain: Nikki's ultimatum marks a turning point that will forever alter the Newman legacy. Because even if Victor changes, he will do so knowing that he came perilously close to losing the one person who loved him not for his power, but for the man she believed he could be. And if he does not change, then Nikki's decision to walk away will stand as one of the most powerful acts of self-respect in the show's history, proving that even in a world ruled by ruthless men, a woman's refusal to endure cruelty can be the most radical and transformative force of all. As Nikki's ultimatum settles over Victor like a thundercloud, the tension in Genoa City escalates to almost unbearable levels, because the ripple effects of her threat extend far beyond the walls of the Newman estate. Everywhere Victor looks, he sees both the tangible and intangible consequences of his behavior. The whispers among colleagues at Newman Enterprises, the subtle but pointed reactions from friends and family, and the palpable shift in alliances as even long-standing associates begin to question whether Victor's personal volatility might now translate into professional vulnerability, and this omnipresent scrutiny forces Victor into a rare state of introspection, one that is uncomfortable for a man who has spent decades projecting invincibility and certainty, because for the first time, the rules of engagement are not dictated by intimidation, money, or sheer willpower, but by Nikki's unwavering stance and the moral clarity that she embodies, which he cannot manipulate or bypass. And as the story delves deeper, viewers witness an intricate exploration of Victor's psychology, as he oscillates between denial, self-justification, fleeting remorse, and genuine fear of losing Nikki, and in private moments, away from the public eye, Victor reflects on the long history of their marriage, from the early days of romance and shared dreams to the gradual entanglement of power, ambition, and betrayal that has defined much of their adult lives, pondering whether he has been blind to the very cruelty Nikki now calls out, or whether he simply never allowed himself to see it, rationalizing his harshness as toughness, as protection, as the price of survival in a world that never forgives weakness. And these reflections are punctuated by flashbacks to pivotal moments in their shared history, from quiet evenings filled with laughter and tenderness to the more fraught encounters where Victor's domineering tendencies first emerged, creating a layered portrayal that reveals the complexities of love intertwined with power, and the painful truth that sometimes the very person who loves you most is also the one most capable of holding a mirror to your darkest flaws. Meanwhile, Nikki does not face this struggle in isolation. Her conversations with friends like Sharon, Ashley, and even occasionally Jack provide both a sounding board and a moral compass, offering perspectives that range from encouragement to caution, reminding Nikki of her own strength and the stakes involved. And these interactions reinforce the emotional weight of her decision, because it is not a reactionary move, but a carefully considered strategy to reclaim agency in a relationship that has too often rendered her voiceless. And in these exchanges, Nikki acknowledges the fear and uncertainty inherent in confronting a man like Victor, fear of loneliness, fear of destabilizing her family, fear of whether her moral stance will be enough to provoke change, but she also expresses a quiet determination to act not out of vengeance, not out of resentment, but from the deepest reservoir of self-respect, recognizing that enduring cruelty silently is a form of complicity, and that standing up for herself may, paradoxically, be the act of love that can either save or finally end her marriage. As the narrative unfolds, Victor's response is neither immediate nor straightforward. He vacillates between attempts at reconciliation and displays of stubborn pride, offering gestures that are at once tantalizingly hopeful and frustratingly ambiguous, which keeps viewers on edge because every action is loaded with the question of sincerity. Does Victor truly intend to change, or is he simply maneuvering to regain control and ensure that Nikki remains tethered to him emotionally and legally? This uncertainty is heightened by Victor's internal monologues, which reveal a man wrestling with a lifetime of learned behaviors, ingrained patterns of dominance, and the occasional flicker of vulnerability that surfaces only when confronted with the possible loss of Nikki. And these glimpses into his psyche humanize him, even as they underscore the danger of his unbridled power and the consequences of his repeated cruelty. The story also delves into the reactions of their children, each of whom has a complicated history with Victor and Nikki, and whose perspectives amplify the tension in the storyline. Victoria, ever poised but emotionally scarred by her father's manipulations, struggles to reconcile her loyalty to both parents, fearing that Nikki's threat might irreparably fracture the family, while simultaneously hoping it will teach Victor accountability. Nick, who has endured Victor's relentless pressure and strategic bullying for years, views the ultimatum with a mix of skepticism and cautious optimism, understanding that Nikki's stand could either catalyze genuine transformation or simply provoke a deeper entrenchment of Victor's obstinacy. And Adam, whose relationship with his father is fraught with rivalry, resentment, and occasional dependence, watches with a calculating eye, questioning whether Nikki's action will weaken Victor's empire, or whether it will harden his resolve, potentially creating greater challenges for everyone involved. And through these interwoven perspectives, the show amplifies the stakes far beyond the central marriage conflict, creating a multi-layered web of personal, professional, and emotional consequences that affect every corner of Genoa City. Adding further complexity, the show does not shy away from portraying the subtle manipulations and psychological games that Victor employs even in the face of Nikki's ultimatum, Small gestures of affection are strategically timed, conversations are layered with double meanings, and moments of apparent vulnerability are meticulously orchestrated to gauge Nikki's reactions, creating a tense, almost cat-and-mouse dynamic in which viewers are invited to read between the lines and question the authenticity of every interaction. Yet Nikki, wiser and more experienced than in previous confrontations, recognizes the patterns and responds with measured assertiveness, refusing to allow her emotions to be weaponized against her. And this dynamic drives much of the suspense and engagement in the storyline, as the audience is left to wonder whether Nikki's moral clarity and emotional strength will ultimately prevail over Victor's cunning and ingrained habits of control. Amidst these personal and familial tensions, the show also highlights the social and professional ramifications of Victor's behavior. Within Newman Enterprises, the senior leadership watches closely, recognizing that a fracture in Victor's personal life could have cascading effects on the company's stability, while rivals and adversaries quietly observe, ready to exploit any sign of vulnerability, and this external pressure mirrors the internal stakes, reinforcing the reality that Victor's power, while formidable, is not immune to human relationships, and that Nikki's moral leverage could be the single factor capable of disrupting the carefully constructed empire he has spent decades building. Throughout the episodes, the writing emphasizes nuance over melodrama, showing that Nikki's threat is neither impulsive nor vindictive but rooted in years of accumulated experience and emotional intelligence. She carefully weighs the potential outcomes, considers the impact on their children, and evaluates Victor's likely responses, demonstrating that standing up to cruelty is not only an act of personal empowerment, but also a complex negotiation of morality, strategy, and self-preservation. And by framing Nikki's actions in this thoughtful, multidimensional way, the show elevates the storyline beyond typical soap opera confrontations, creating a narrative that is both emotionally resonant and intellectually engaging, appealing to viewers who appreciate character-driven drama, as well as suspenseful plot development. As the storyline progresses, there are moments of tentative progress, in which Victor attempts small, symbolic gestures of change, apologies, minor acts of consideration, restraint in situations where he previously would have acted with aggression. But Nikki, acutely aware of the difference between superficial compliance and genuine transformation, maintains her cautious stance, observing each action critically, refusing to be swayed by charm alone, and insisting that real change requires consistency, accountability, and evidence that Victor can act ethically even when unobserved, thereby reinforcing the narrative theme that true growth is measured not in grand gestures, but in everyday choices and sustained moral behavior. The tension escalates further when external crises, ranging from corporate challenges to personal betrayals, intersect with the marital conflict, testing both Nikki's resolve and Victor's capacity for change. And in these high-stakes situations, the show skillfully juxtaposes the intimate emotional drama with larger-than-life stakes typical of the young and the restless, demonstrating how personal ethics, loyalty, and emotional intelligence influence not only relationships but also the broader socio-political landscape of Genoa City, and how a single moral choice can reverberate through multiple spheres of influence, affecting the lives of characters far beyond the central marriage. As viewers continue to follow the storyline, the drama is heightened by careful pacing and layered characterization. Writers intersperse emotionally charged confrontations with quieter reflective scenes, allowing both Nikki and Victor, and by extension the audience, to consider the implications of each decision and its potential impact on the future, while also providing opportunities for secondary characters to react, intervene, or offer guidance, thereby enriching the narrative complexity and reinforcing the interconnectedness of the Newman family and their extended social and professional networks. Ultimately, the arc of this storyline functions not merely as a sensational plot device but as a profound exploration of human behavior, power dynamics, and the possibility of redemption. Nikki's ultimatum serves as both a moral anchor and a catalyst for introspection, forcing Victor, and by extension the audience, to confront difficult questions about accountability, personal growth, and the cost of cruelty in relationships. And as the storyline unfolds, it becomes clear that the resolution will have lasting consequences for both characters, regardless of whether the marriage survives, fundamentally altering the emotional landscape of Genoa City, and setting the stage for future conflicts, alliances, and revelations that will continue to captivate viewers and provide rich material for the show's complex tapestry of drama.